Good afternoon. We are back live on Cultureveille, and we are here in the middle of the Sonar+D Congress at the Barcelona Congress Center. Today is the second day of Sonar+D, which is a congress that talks about technology, innovation, and business. And I am very pleased to welcome on the set to talk about machine learning, Gene Kogan. So, Gene, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
Gene, you're an artist and a programmer or coder. That's how you define yourself, I guess. And you were just giving a workshop that was called Machine Learning for Artists.
Right.
This is a workshop you've been giving a lot lately, right?
Yep.
So what is the purpose of this particular workshop?
I've been giving this workshop for the last couple of years, and the intent is to give people without training in computer science or engineering, some sort of an introduction to machine learning in a creative context. And there's kind of a few reasons for that. One is that I think, being creative with something is usually the first instinct that people have when they are, confronted with a new technology. So it's usually the most engaging way, rather than trying to learn how to solve someone else's problems. So that is one of the reasons. And then I'm also an artist. I work as a new media artist, and I'm interested in interaction design, things of that sort. So, and I know a lot of people who are really, really interested in machine learning to be able to apply in that domain. And so I've been kind of interested in helping people around me learn how to do machine learning. So that's kind of the genesis of the workshop. And
you also wrote an online book that is called ML4A, Machine Learning for Artists.
Right. Yep.
Right? That is a free online book that everybody can access.
Exactly.
What do you talk about in that book?
Exactly that. It started actually as an outgrowth of the teaching materials that I was collecting for the workshops. And so it's mostly kind of bundled with workshops. So it's all the materials, all the instructional guides. There's a series of demos that people can kind of run inside the browser that helps them understand some higher level concepts in machine learning. And there is a very, very slowly written book, which is still in progress. I've been writing it for a long time. It's kind of a labor of love, you could say. And that's kind of the highest level introduction, so trying to introduce how neural networks work and applications of them and so on.
Okay. So before we go any further, what is machine learning?
Machine learning has many definitions, I guess, but basically it's attempting to get computers to solve tasks in artificial intelligence using something that we consider to be learning. So getting examples, like data examples, and learning how to do the task that is requested of them based on the data that they're given. So it's kind of useful in circumstances that you can model as a function, like a functional program that does something, but that you can't write because it's too complex. And so if you have data instead, you can have a program basically write itself in some sense of the word.
So the computer is doing the work for you?
Yes, you could say so. Well, not all of it. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into it. Like a lot of the work is very human. So making data sets, because data sets tend to have millions and millions of examples in them, and they're labeled. And they're usually labeled by people known as graduate students, or sometimes they're labeled online for pay. There's lots of ways of acquiring data sets, but that has a huge impact on how machine learning works. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, machine learning sounds like something that computer scientists or engineers would use, but not really artists. So what type of artists could use it, and what for?
Well, I would say artists are interested in anything that's new. Like part of the role of being an artist is to go into the unknown and bring it into the known, right? To try to make sense out of something that may not be very salient. So I would say anything that's kind of new and emerging is especially as a technology-based artist, I would say the role of an artist should really be to look at new things. It's not necessarily to do painting or sculpting. And also machine learning is such a general, the reason why it's there's so much excitement about it in all these different contexts is that machine learning can be applied to problem domains as diverse as, medical diagnostics to self-driving cars to computer graphics. So there's really something that's relevant to almost everybody that can be done with machine learning. And so for artists, there's no different. Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an example, a use case maybe of machine learning used for artistic purposes?
Yep. So I'm interested a lot in for example, like interaction. So I work a lot in creating interactive installations. So let's say installations that have cameras that look at things and people interact with the cameras and then something happens. Maybe there's some sort of generative graphics going on or there's some sort of a playful interactive scenario. There's a long history to this kind of art. And machine learning very much expands the range of possible activities that you can incorporate into that because the computer vision is so much more sophisticated. So you can recognize very complex objects. Well, of course you can, but like a computer can now. And so you can make a lot more subtle interactions based on much more details than you could before using conventional computer vision.
Can anyone use it? Because it sounds kind of complicated. You are a programmer, so I guess you can code the program yourself. You can make it. Mm-hmm. But for artists who don't know how to do it, are there available tools? How can they appropriate this?
It's definitely still an emerging technology, so it's not as easy as things that we've had around for a really, really long time, but it's become dramatically easier. So it used to be, I think, even 10 years ago that the only people who were doing machine learning were academics. Now it's being used a lot in industry, and it's being used in non-traditional backgrounds, and so there's a lot of demand to make the tools much more accessible. And so for my part, I've like you mentioned with ML4A, I've been making these resources that try to abstract some of the details that are not necessarily relevant. Like very, very low-level details that may not be relevant to some applied domain. Try to abstract them a little bit and make the tools a lot more sort of ready-made and easier to use. And it's a little bit of like a gateway drug. You can kind of like get interested in understanding the tool at a high level, and then you kind of tend to want to dig further. Which is how it works for me always. So ML4A is one thing. There's also lots of online courses. A lot of the programming libraries that have been built are much higher level than they used to be, a lot easier to install. So there's definitely a lot of attention being paid to making it much more accessible.
So what piece of advice would you give to an artist who would be interested in machine learning but who would have no idea where to begin? How should it start?
Start tinkering. There's go online. There's stuff on ML4A, as I mentioned. There's also really great classes online. Like if you go to cadenze.com, there's 2 really awesome classes for machine learning for creative purposes. One is taught by Rebecca Febrink, and it's an introduction to this tool called Wekinator, which is really, really great for interactive musicians and artists. Another one is Creative Applications in TensorFlow, which is taught by Parag Mittal, which is like TensorFlow, and that's actually like a very, very scientific library that people can start using for creative purposes in a very, from scratch. Those are really good places to start, and trying to read. There's been lots written about it, lots of articles and so on. I would say those are good places to go. Mm-hmm.
So you definitely don't need to be a programmer yourself to be able to use it.
No, absolutely not. It helps. It helps, though. I think like being a programmer is a really, really great skill for anyone to have. But it doesn't take as much time to become you don't have to specialize in programming. It could be just one of the tools that you have. Yeah.
All right. So that's part of the toolkit of an artist, even if that's not their primary tool.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Gene, for giving us an overview of what you're doing and what machine learning can bring to artists. And I wish you a very nice stay here in Barcelona.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Mm-hmm.